Hello and welcome to an update on the CRYTEK vs CIG Star Citizen Lawsuit, with CRYTEK'S last response before the court rule on CRYTEK'S own motion to dismiss. Yes, they are trying to dismiss their own case. Also, I'm not a lawyer, and anything I talk about here is from my understanding of the case and documents that I read in my layman's opinion. Let's do a quick summary of what's recently been happening. CRYTEK are trying to dismiss their own case, as they say they want to wait for Squadron 42, Star Citizen's single-player campaign, to be released and then refile. This is after everything other than 2 of CRYTEK'S complaints have already been dismissed or withdrawn. The 2 remaining points being the Squadron 42 claim, that being that Squadron 42's development and sale as a standalone game breaches CRYTEK'S GLA, game license agreement, with CIG. And the credits claim is the other one, that Star Citizen should be displaying CryEngine CRYTEK credits, and it is not. CRYTEK wants to have the case dismissed without prejudice, and no conditions, so that they can bring the case back to court in the future. At least that's what they say when Squadron 42 releases. CIG want the case to be dismissed with prejudice, so it can't be brought back, or at least have some conditions put on the dismissal, so if it does get brought back to court, at least CIG will have their legal fees paid for, things like that. The court had CRYTEK put up a $500,000 bond to cover CIG's fees in situations like this, where CIG may be the prevailing party, or there is a dismissal. CIG pretty much demolished CRYTEK'S remaining case in its last response, showing that CRYTEK had contacted Amazon to ask what was licensed to CIG by Amazon, because CIG changed engines from the CryEngine to the Lumberyard Engine, and Amazon said all versions of CryEngine and Lumberyard that CRYTEK had given Amazon were then also licensed to CIG, and this suggests that even if CIG had parts of their game using CryEngine still, and not just Lumberyard, that would still be within their agreement with Amazon, and therefore not in breach of anything with CRYTEK. And that's an interesting thing, because we don't actually know if there is errant code that is purely CryEngine code in CIG's code now. If it's entirely custom code and Lumberyard, we just don't know. And even if it is that there is a errant string of code, or some of the engine is reliant on older CryEngine stuff, CIG seemed to be able to use it anyway, according to Amazon. So CIG also used some extremely colourful language when explaining to the court why CRYTEK shouldn't be able to dismiss their case without condition, saying CRYTEK should not be allowed to aim its car at CIG's storefront window, stomp the accelerator, smash through, do donuts for years, then back out and drive away, maybe to circle around and crash into CIG another day. CIG go on to then say that CRYTEK are avoiding a near certain adverse ruling by doing what they're doing, by trying to have their case dismissed. And CRYTEK since have made their final response before the judge rules on the motion to dismiss on the 7th of February. So CRYTEK's reply. CRYTEK say their motion to dismiss is about timing and efficient case management. CIG's opposition repeatedly suggests, with ample vitriol and hyperbole, that CIG has all but won this case, and that CRYTEK is surrendering. Whether CIG is posturing for the court or the public, CIG's spin could not be less accurate. CRYTEK filed its motion for the simple reason that CIG, as unbelievable as it sounds, several years into games development, purports redacted. So large sections of things that CRYTEK are saying are redacted for the public. Now, this is something CRYTEK did before, and is clearly aware that there are onlookers, and they use these redacted statements to potentially make things look more dramatic to onlookers, something which I really dislike. CIG has already said that they have not shared any release dates for Squadron 42 with CRYTEK, only that they weren't sure how players would access the game yet, so the assumption there is maybe it's through the Persistent Universe launcher, maybe it's through a standalone launcher, maybe you'll be able to do it entirely offline. I so hope that we can play the game entirely offline. Please, CIG. The other thing to potentially note in CIG's favour as well is that Squadron 42 pledges include access to Star Citizen's Arena Commander and Star Marine modes, just not access to the Persistent Universe if you've just pledged for Squadron 42. So that is suggesting that if you buy Squadron 42, then you have access to Star Citizen as well. They're sort of part of the same universe and sort of part of the same game. It's just a different module for it. Maybe that's where they're going with that. While it seems far-fetched that any video game developer who has been working extensively on a game and pressing it towards a release date, redacted, CIG stated this position in a recent verified discovery response. This has suggested to CRYTEK that CIG has fully embraced a delay strategy. So basically what they're saying is that CIG are delaying the release of Squadron 42 because of this case potentially. CRYTEK go on to say that this dismissal is a matter of timing and nothing more, so they should be able to dismiss because they're just going to pause and then start the litigation again later. And CIG seeks sanctions, not conditions, on the basis that CRYTEK is having a cut-and-run approach to avoid an imminent adverse ruling that leads to a fee award. None of CIG's characterizations are apparently true according to CRYTEK. CRYTEK is not running, and there is no imminent adverse ruling whatsoever. CRYTEK, unlike CIG, is willing to back its words with deeds. CRYTEK go on to say that it will refile upon the release of Squadron 42, and it firmly believes it will prevail. CRYTEK is not losing, it is waiting. Breach of the GLA, the game license agreement, is based on development of Squadron 42 as a standalone game, and not the actual release of Squadron 42. So what CRYTEK are trying to say here is that even if they continued the case, it's not dependent on their current case whether Squadron 42 isn't released or not. It's that the development of Squadron 42 as a standalone game breaches the game license agreement, if you see what I mean. So they go on to say, CIG does not have any rights to embed the CryEngine in and develop any game that does not fit the GLA's definition of a game. From the inception of this case, it has been CRYTEK'S position that CIG's development of Squadron 42 as a standalone game was itself a breach of the GLA, whether or not Squadron 42 was ever released at all. CRYTEK are basically saying that the Squadron 42 release isn't a precondition of the breach claim, but once they release Squadron 42, CIG won't be able to hide that they've been developing Squadron 42 in a way that breaches the GLA, their game license agreement. This argument, however, is a little weak, given that CIG are using the Lumberyard Engine now and have Amazon giving them a license to use CryEngine as well. So it seems to me that CIG can do what they want with it? CRYTEK say they should not be faulted for assuming the truth of CIG's public statements as well. So basically they're saying that Squadron 42 should have been out by now, but also CIG said that Squadron 42 was being developed as a standalone game previously. CRYTEK are still claiming that Star Citizen didn't switch engines to Lumberyard, and CIG had admitted that they hadn't switched engines to Lumberyard, but are instead using CryEngine under the Lumberyard Amazon license in an attempt to mislead the court, which seems an odd way to phrase it, because, as I said earlier, for all we know, that Star Citizen might have no old CryEngine code in it now, and it might all be either custom code or Lumberyard code or more recent CryEngine code, I suppose. But it doesn't matter anyway, reasonably irrelevant if Amazon licensed them, they used to use the CryEngine anyway. So CRYTEK say CIG's repeated reversals make it extremely hard to litigate the parties' disputes in an organised fashion, or to even decide what discovery is necessary, because CIG's litigation statements are discarded at its convenience. CRYTEK go on to say that CIG never stopped using the same CryEngine code originally licensed under the GLA, and CIG have never provided a single authority stating that taking a second license from a third party to develop using the same code covered the first license somehow voids the restrictions of the first license. CRYTEK thus remains confident that as soon as CIG admits or can no longer claim ignorance to the fact that it is developing a standalone version of Squadron 42, that it will be in breach of the GLA, and that CIG's license provides CIG no shelter from the original GLA. CRYTEK also argue that dismissing now saves everyone time and money, as then they can sort of like bundle everything together and sue CIG for when they release Squadron 42. They also say that the case remains at its early stages, and according to CRYTEK, it's sensible to have it dismissed now. I would like to point out, though, that the case is moving into its third year, but I am sure a huge amount more discovery could have taken place if this case does continue, so CRYTEK do say that they have proposed some reasonable conditions on dismissal in the past, but don't seem to have included any of those reasonable conditions in their own motion to dismiss that they gave to the court. So CRYTEK say that these conditions were that any current claims from current action could be used in the defence or support of prevailing parties' fees. So I'm not sure if that covers everything that's already been dismissed or withdrawn or not. I don't expect it does. CRYTEK would agree to leave its posted bond with the court until parties resolve their dispute, and if CRYTEK did not bring a second action, then either party could bring a motion to have their fees resolved, though I'm not sure what sort of time limit would be on that. But anyway, I don't believe those conditions were included in CRYTEK'S motion to dismiss, though, so it's sort of semi-relevant. They're just saying they were reasonable and had been reasonable in the past. They say any of CIG's proposed conditions now are punitive and seek to punish CRYTEK, but I do think that's actually kind of the point of them. CRYTEK go on to say that none of CIG's expenses will be wasted, as they effectively will continue the case at a later date, and that CRYTEK's basis for dismissal is not suspect, rather a matter of timing and ripeness. CRYTEK then go on to say typical cases warranting dismissal with prejudice are quite different from the present case, and that there is no near certain adverse ruling for CRYTEK to avoid, and the payment of fees is unnecessary to protect CIG. Dismissal of CRYTEK'S credits claim along with its Squadron 42 claim is basically a matter of judicial economy. It makes sense to have them both sort of like dealt with at the same time or later, is what CRYTEK are saying, so they might as well dismiss them both now. And it looks like CRYTEK actually have been trying to avoid some phases of discovery, potentially for economy, but also potentially because they don't want to show CIG certain things. So the requested documents which haven't been put forward to CIG yet are the cash flow and financial documents, and more info on CryEngine developed games, with CRYTEK saying that these documents have no bearing on the case and are overly broad anyway. As CRYTEK say, CRYTEK is not seeking damages based on the theory of lost profits or lost sales of CRYTEK'S developed games as a result of CIG's removal of CryEngine credits from Star Citizen. However, CRYTEK also says that the admission that its game business was not damaged is not in any way an admission that CRYTEK'S licensing business has not been damaged, or that CRYTEK has not been harmed from the loss of advertising it was entitled to under the GLA. And they end that with CRYTEK respectfully requesting the court to grant its motion for voluntary dismissal without prejudice. So, what do you think about that? I would think personally, again, I'm not a lawyer, that it's very unlikely that the court would dismiss without some form of conditions, especially at this stage. I think for CIG, they just want it to be dismissed with prejudice, and CIG to get their fees paid for by CRYTEK beyond just the $500,000 bond as well. They CIG have said that they've spent almost $900,000 or around $900,000, almost $1 million. CIG are in a really strong position as well because a large portion of CRYTEK'S case has now been withdrawn or dismissed already, and they're relying on these 2 points, which it looks like Amazon have basically said, yeah, we licensed the CryEngine to them, they can use it under our license. So that's an interesting thing. The court should make its decision on the 7th of February 2020, and at that time we'll look at what they say. I'll link down below Leonard French's Lawful Masses video on the latest stuff about CRYTEK versus CIG Star Citizen Lawsuit. It's very interesting. He's obviously an actual lawyer, so he has some more legal sway than I do. But what do you think? Do you think, like me, that CRYTEK'S case is extremely weak and that the Amazon license pretty much covers them for anything they want to do? Or do you think CRYTEK might have something here? I'd personally bet that it was pretty much all over from CIG's last response and them saying that Amazon had given them the license to use CryEngine versions that they had given to Amazon, and the Lumberyard Engine as well. But yeah, that's just my thoughts. Whatever your thoughts, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. But please remain civil. That is all I ask. Every month we have a ship giveaway for January 2020. It's for an Anvil Arrow and Star Citizen game package. Just comment on any of my videos made this month to be in for a chance. More details in the description below. Oh, it's time to shill. If you're looking for a VPN, then consider NordVPN. They have many advantages over free VPNs, but are incredibly cheap, and I use them and can recommend. There's Shadow as well, which is an alternative to owning your own gaming PC. They give you a sort of Windows 10 environment focused on gaming, and it leverages the power of your internet and their cloud so that you can stream it to any device or other PC or laptop or phone or whatever. And you can now order systems with varying scales of hardware for up to 4K gaming. And as always, it works fantastically well with Star Citizen. It's an extremely affordable way to get access to a high-spec PC. Links below to Shadow and Nord, and make sure you use the code BoredGamer to get a discount. Thank you very much for watching, and if you want to support my channel further, consider becoming a Patreon or YouTube member via the join button, or sharing my videos, or liking and subscribing. Take care, and I'll see you in the verse.